live. Okay. So something I just talked about. Sorry guys, I'm going to have to repeat myself. So we're going to go create a new action that's going to help us colorize this photo. So I went to Window Actions, which brought me up here. By default, these default actions are showing. I'm going to click this little triangle to make it smaller. And then I'm going to create create a new set of actions. My voice is starting to go out a little bit. I'm going to click that, and then I simply named it My Actions. So with that selected, I'm going to click the Add a New Action. Or, yeah, I think it's the Add a New Action. So you should see this action dialog box. Let's call this Color Layer. Or maybe Colorize Layer, but that's okay. You could, if you wanted, add a hotkey to it. Don't do that at this time. It's kind of weird on Macs because it's hard to say what F1 will do because sometimes it will increase and decrease contrast. Sometimes Photoshop overrides it and it will actually perform the action. So if you want to use these hotkeys, unfortunately you have to go into the system and turn off the system hotkeys. But those hotkeys are there. Let's apply, you could apply a color to it. This is just organizational, it's just a label. Go ahead and apply a color if you'd like, but I'm going to set it to none. And then I'm going to click record. Now I have to be careful about everything I click inside of Photoshop while this record is going on. Even selecting layers, it will record that as an action. So what you need to do while this is recording, and if you need to stop it, there's a stop button right here. You can stop and then begin recording again. From here, I'm going to click the Add a New Layer icon at the bottom of the Layers palette, or Add a New Blank Layer. And as soon as I do that, notice that it records that action. There's a little Make Layer thing right here. So it made that layer. While Layer 1 is still selected, I'm going to change that from Normal to Overlay Blend Mode. So you should have a blank layer, and it should be set to Overlay Blend Mode. Once I do that, we'll see, look, the action takes that step and it kind of records it. From here, we're going to do that step I just mentioned a second ago, holding down the Alt key. Do you see where it says normal right here? I can't change it because if I change it, it will record that action. So basically, we'll change it to overlay and then back to normal. You have to be really careful about these actions. Sometimes it's hard to get Photoshop to do exactly what you want with these actions, but yeah. So you change the blend mode from normal to overlay. From here, I am going to hold down the Alt key and then select the Add a New Fill or Adjustment Layer right here. So that very small circle icon at the bottom of your Layers palette. And I'm going to select Hue and Saturation. And then click OK. Or at least click the option. So holding down the Alt key and adding, well, I can't right now. That's one problem with these actions. So yeah, if you hold down the Alt key and then click this little icon right here, it's the one that my mouse is over. It's a little tiny circle. That's the one you want to click. And then you want to add a Hue Saturation Adjustment Layer. If you held down the Alt key properly, you will see this New Layer dialog box. This dialog box comes up because you held down the Alt key, very simply. I'm going to check this Use Previous Layer as Clipping Mask. And the reason why we're doing this is because actions with fewer steps will have fewer problems. And because this layer as an action, so if I go back to my Actions palette, notice that that adjustment layer automatically, it was one step. Do you see how it's one step right here? Instead of, if I could have done it where I created the adjustment layer and then made it clip to the layer beneath it. But this way, it's one step. Once I've done that, I'm going to click Stop at the bottom of the Actions palette. We have created our actions. Go ahead and hit play once. Except, why didn't it do it? You might need to have the background layer selected. So I'm going to hit play once. And there we go. It should automatically create a blank layer at overlay blend mode and a hue saturation layer above it.
So you have to go to where?
If you click this little play button, it will, well, first you need to stop the action, and then you need to click play. Also, the action should have these 3 steps in it: make layer, set current layer, and make adjustments. Actually, you know what? I just realized I could have done this in 2 steps. When I made the layer, I could have made it set to the overlay blend mode, but oh well.
And so we're not supposed to do anything after that?
No. I wanted to show you guys how to make actions first. And then we're going to cover colorizing, and then we're going to get back to more complex actions in a second. Okay. So I have my photo, and right quick, I'm going to make some adjustments to it. So these layers, they were existing so that I could create that action. I'm going to go ahead and delete the layers that I created to create that action. And let's assume that I retouched all the damage to this photo, because I have somewhere, but I don't remember where it is. First, I need to start fixing some of the contrast problems, and I'll go ahead and do that in levels. So I'll start a levels adjustment layer.
So is it supposed to be on play right now?
Well, the play will just play the action once. It'll go through all 3 steps. So if I hit play in the actions palette, so I'll select that action. I don't know if you have to select it or not, but I think you do. And then I click play. Watch, it ran through those 3 actions in a second. You can start to see how this saves you a lot of time. Yeah? You can. I'm going to go ahead and do it just because it will save me. It'll make things a little bit clearer, because the first step, I wanted to show you the actions, how to create the action first. And then we're going to fix this photo a little bit. Let me pause the recording and make sure everybody's caught up. Too many things to remember all at once. So we created a new curves adjustment layer, and we added this increased contrast right here. And I also stuck all my stuff into a group, because I'm bad at remembering to turn on the recording again. We're going to learn about stamp visible. Stamp visible is what it will do, and it's easy to overuse stamp visible. One of the things that you've done is you've probably gone in and you've fixed a lot of these marks and things in your photo, right? If I simply selected the background layer and pressed Command J, and I sharpened this, it's not going to sharpen the things that you fixed, right? So let me go ahead and do a few quick, just super fast edits. I'm not going to, let's see, start a new blank layer, and then sample all layers is on. So I'm just going to kind of fix the left side of this image right quick as fast as I possibly can. Not doing a terribly good job, but just so I can show you this concept of how layers works. I really wish I could have found this file. So I fixed the left side of that and some of the background. Anyway, so if I sharpen this layer using Highpass or something other than that, I'm not going to sharpen the things that I fixed, right? What I want to do is select my topmost layer, and here is the hotkey. It is Command, Alt, Shift, and E. That is how you stamp visible. It's also known as smashing your fist on the keyboard and pressing E. It's all the modifier keys and E. Alt, Shift, Command, and E. Smashing your fist on the keyboard and pressing E. That will create a new layer of all the layers beneath it. Now, from here I can create a Highpass sharpening layer. So, how do we do that? Filter other Highpass, right? Just like in the sharpening video. Applying our levels. The nice thing about this image is that I can hit it. I'm getting a little bit of noise. Actually, that's not good. I'm getting a little bit of noise. I can't remember how exactly I fixed that, but I'm going to apply a value of 6 pixels. You could go a little bit higher, a little bit lower. I'm thinking maybe 6 pixels. Yeah, maybe 5. Let's go down to 5 and see what that happens. I'm having a little bit of trouble because I'm going to sharpen these cracks and stuff that I don't want to sharpen, but I haven't fixed them yet. So, and then of course I'm going to try the different blend modes to see how it works. What's the hotkey? Alt, Shift, plus and minus for me to go up and down with my blend modes. Aha. Of course, that didn't work. Why? Because I have a tool active that has a blend mode. So as I hold down Alt and Shift, it's going to change the blend mode on the tool. What I need to do is select the arrow tool, and then now as I hold down Shift and Alt, I can try different blend modes. I think Vivid Light's going to work pretty well. It is going to kind of over sharpen the noise a little bit, but look at how that punches that out. Look how brilliant that is. Here's before, or here's after, here's before, right? Always an important step to do. And we've come a long way from the original image right here, right? Look at how much we've done, and we really haven't gotten that deep into the image yet. We've just done some basic toning adjustments. I went with Vivid Light. Linear light might work pretty well too. Kind of go with what suits the taste. If you feel like it's over sharpened, just simply reduce the opacity a little bit. It is kind of sharpening the noise a little bit. Notice how this background now has a texture when originally it probably was a single color. I would probably use masking on this smart object to get rid of that. There are some advanced masking techniques which I might get to next week if we want. Probably do, not next week, I should say 2 weeks from now, next class period. Remember, there is no class next week. We'll talk about next week. Just in case if you want me to be here to talk about your Project 3 or anything like that, I can be here, but there's no requirement for you to be here. I suspect that being Thanksgiving that no one's going to, so. But if you guys want, we'll discuss it. But anyway, I could apply a mask, and there are some advanced sharpening techniques, but for now, this is pretty good. If you are happy with the tone adjustments, then if your toning and sharpening all looks pretty good, now we need to go into recolorizing this image. The nice thing about the human eye, the easy thing about recolorizing an image, the human eye is awesome at seeing luminosity. We have a number, so we have rods and cones in our eyes, and yeah, you never know what you're going to learn when you come to this class. You have rods and cones in your eyes, and you have, let's see, which one does color? I forget. I think it's the rods do, let's see, rods? Yeah, the rods do luminosity, the cones do color. And you have one cone for each color. So you have red, green, and blue. So you need 3 cones for every color, essentially. Or at least you sort of need 3 cones in order to see color. That, by the way, is why dogs don't see as many colors. They only have 2 cones. Yes. That means that you are essentially bichromat, which means you only have 2 cones. So if you're red-green colorblind, you lack the red-green cone. Is anybody red-green colorblind? Does anybody know? Very common. It's in men, oddly enough. There are also tetrachromats. People with 4 cones. They can see another color. I don't even know what that color is. Which is funny to think about. Like, how would that person ever describe to you what that's like? I know that's what you're thinking. You want to ask that person, what's it like to see with 4 colors? What are they going to do? Oh, it looks more red. It's redder. Because essentially what they see is they see a broader spectrum. They see more colors in between purple and, what is it, red and purple. But anyway, so back to my original point of the fact that we see luminosity a lot better than we see color. So getting colors exactly right isn't as important as getting the luminosity correct in that sharpening. Again, that's why we sharpen the luminosity and not the color. So I'm going to take my action, and we need one of these layers. So I'm going to hit play. Actually, I need to make sure that color layer is selected. If you have one of your steps selected, what will happen with the action is it will play the action from that point. So I need to make sure that color layer is selected, or whatever you called your action. And then I'm going to push the play button, and it's going to run that action for me. Might not seem like such a huge time saver, but it really is, because we're going to have to create a couple of these layers, because every color in this image, and this image doesn't have a huge number of colors. It has a background, it has a skin tone, maybe the eyes. Each time I create a color, I'm going to want it to be on its own layer. Now, where did I put my notepad? We need a skin tone. Skin tones are the thing that we are most sensitive to. It's the colors that we're used to seeing. So if we pick a wrong color, we're kind of screwed, especially with babies. We want babies to be cute and nice and things like that. So I actually never met this person who gave me their image to restore. So I have no idea what they look like. I know they're Caucasian, so we're going to need to find kind of a pinkish skin tone. Babies tend to be a little bit more pink and reddish than when people grow older. I also have no idea what the color of this person's eyes are. What I had to do is I had to go and call them and ask them what color their eyes were, or who. Actually, I didn't. I don't even know if this person's still alive, but I'm not sure. But the person who I asked told me I think they were blue. I don't remember. I meant to bring the original image, but I forgot. So anyway, we need a skin tone color. Which one thing we could do is we could go to Google Images, and again, remember, we're not worried about copyrights here, because we're just going to grab a skin tone. I don't know. Let's look at babies. We get lots of babies. Find a baby pic that you like that has a good skin tone. And I'm just going to save that image as. I don't care about resolution. We're not going to print it out. I'm not going to use it in any other way but to sample color from. So I just right-click that image and click Saved As. And that put it in my downloads folder, which I don't know what that is. Where did it go? Where did you save? Oh, here's my babies. It's saved to the desktop. Very good. Once I am there, and I'm going to pause and come around and help everybody for just a second. I do want to make sure that my hue saturation layer is selected. Sometimes when you create layers above clipped layers, it will clip both of them. But I want to drag my baby photo into my document because it's just going to be easier that way. It's going to bring it in as a layer. And I can show and hide it with the eyeball. So I can show and hide it with the eyeball. And that's going to make it super, super easy for me to sample skin tones from this. One of the weird things actually about the photo that I selected, this might be a problem. Notice that, well, one, this is getting kind of creepy. And then two, the skin tones colors are rarely solid in the real world. So if you want to make your colors realistic, you need to allow for your colors to change a little bit or vary. And usually you have to do this manually. I suppose you could use the brush engine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my eyedropper tool by pressing the I key. You can also select it here in the toolbox. Is everyone caught up with me? Do we need to take a little break?
How did you get the picture image?
I simply drug it in from my desktop. So I clicked the image and I dragged it in on top of the layer. And that will bring it in as a smart object. I'll hit escape because I already have it there, but yeah. Is everybody with me? Okay, good. So with the eyedropper tool, I'm going to sample a color, and then I'm going to select that blank layer. I'm going to hide the baby's layer, or the image that I selected, grabbing my brush tool. Now, one thing with your brush tool, don't forget, reset the tool, right? Right-click the little brush icon at the top. So first, select the brush in your tools palette, and then right-click and reset the tool. So just to cover that again right quick, I grabbed my eyedropper tool, And you know what? It's set to 3x3 average. I might actually want to make an 11x11 average. I think I might get a better skin tone from that. And I just click, and I can see literally that it is, my foreground color is now that. I'll go ahead and hide that layer. Select my blank layer that I created with my action. Grab my brush tool and reset that tool. It will start kind of small, so remember the bracket keys will increase and decrease sizes. And I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. Remember, you don't want to zoom in too much. Well, yeah, you do. Okay, so don't forget this thing whenever restoring photos. We covered this last week, but I want to make sure everyone remembers. Everyone go to Window, Window Arrange, New Window for photorestore.jpg. And that simply will create a new window for that. I'm going to close my colorization example.tiff because what I would like to do is set up my Photoshops so that it has the images next to each other. What I can do then is go to Window, Arrange, 2 up horizontal. So Window, Arrange, 2 up horizontal. You could do 2 up vertical. Actually, 2 up vertical would work too. Either way. What this is going to let me do is have, and I'll press the space bar to kind of bring up my hand tool so that I can move my document around. I will be able to see the changes that I make at both an increased zoom and kind of zoomed out. Very important, very easy to do. Make the mistake that when you're editing your photos to zoom in too much and not realize what the overall image looks like. So very important to kind of have both of those. And if for any reason your remember you want to click this eyeball to kind of show and hide your example image. You're not going to need it once you sample that color, although you will need to get back to it every once in a while. And then I'm simply going to start painting on the image where the skin tones should be right. And this is essentially going to become my base layer. If you feel like you need to, you could use the selection tools. I'm not going to worry too much about things like the lips and the eyes. I can always go back and erase. I'm going to grab my eraser tool by pressing the E key. Let's see, let's make this window a little bit bigger like that. And if I accidentally went over, which because this image is a little bit, I can go in and erase the parts that I don't want. Now at this stage in the game, the colorization probably doesn't look particularly realistic. Again, skin tones especially, aren't a single color. So what I might do is on the same layer, you could run your action and do this on a new layer. I do recommend that don't try to create multiple colors on the same layer. But if it's just a slight variation of that color, maybe I add a little bit more red to this skin tone. And I apply it at maybe 20%. So I'm going to change my opacity to 20% here as I'm brushing. And apply a little bit of variation. What you do is you keep layering the colors again and again and again until it starts to look realistic. Make sure that this layer is on the overlay blend mode. And if you're starting to get kind of nuked out colors, that's what the hue saturation adjustment layer is for. That's why we created that, because the overlay blend mode can do some weird things to our colors. Notice that the color that I applied isn't quite, whoa, that's huge. Notice that the color that come on now. Notice that the color I applied isn't quite the same. They're not exact. So I'm going to take my hue saturation layer and maybe desaturate it a little bit, get it to make it where it looks where I feel like it looks right. I don't recommend changing the lightness in hue saturation. It's kind of a weird setting honestly, lightness. Because lightness ends up changing like the color in a weird way too. And it's okay if your baby looks really weird on that first layer. Very common thing for it to just look really weird on that first time you pass. I'm going to change my opacity back up to 100% and then apply some of those color tones. The way that you get this to look realistic is you alter your colors and apply little bits of color variation. Look at the colors in the image here. Actually, I kind of wish I'd picked a better image, quite frankly. I feel like this one has been retouched a little bit. But notice, like, under the eyes, like, it's a kind of a different color. Like, this is very much an art. So I'm going to change my opacity to maybe, let's do 50%. And add a little bit of that purple under the eyes. Kind of a tricky thing to get right, honestly. Another thing is I wish the picture I selected is not great because I can't see the baby's head. I need to grab colors from the baby's head, which is going to be rather difficult from this image. So I might go and pull another image. Skin tones are going to be by far the hardest. It's just really hard. You're going to want to change your brush. If you feel like you need to start over, don't be afraid to start over. As far as like getting things on, getting your colors to fall in the edges, like you don't need to be super ridiculously specific about things. It's okay for your colors to kind of, again, the human eye, just not very good at seeing color. It will fill in the details for us a lot of the time. And that is how I was able to create, by the way, if you need examples, an example, I have that. I'm going to go back to that TIFF I gave you guys because I really wish I could have found this image for you guys. I did a pretty good job, not the best, but. And remember, the reason that we created that action was because each time I create a new color, I'm going to want to run that action. For minor variations, it's kind of okay, but like once I start to get into like the background, let's maybe say I want to paint it a nice baby blue or something. I don't know. So I'm going to paint that in. And by the way, the more you paint in colors, the more realistic it will look. So maybe give everything a single color for now. And that might help you kind of feel a little better as you're kind of going through this image. Because once you've started to add more colors, things start to look a little bit more natural. And I'm just doing a really sloppy job here, just to kind of show you. Oops, you know what? Oh no, I applied it to the wrong layer. Oh crap. I'm going to undo all of that. Go back to my blue layer. All right, one very important thing, guys. It's kind of an annoyance with this technique, but this technique does work really well because it gives you a nice hue saturation. But there is one big disadvantage, guys. Very important. Pay attention. If you need to get the skin tone back, if you need to get that color that you had again, I can't just sample right here. Why? Because I applied the overlay blend mode. If I want to get that color back, all I need to do is change it back to normal, sample that color, and then go back and then change it back to overlay. Okay? Did everybody see that? Do I need to repeat it? So if you want to select a color, you can't just click an image, like at least in this case. I could go back to the original image and try to find that exact color. I'm going to have a really hard time. I may need to find that exact kind of pinkish color. So I need to select normal. and then go back to overlay. Or I need to go to normal and then sample that color and then select overlay. And honestly, that was one of the rather harder things with the example that I showed you. Let me open that up. So when I colorized this grass, oh man, I had a hard time. I had a hard time getting the grass. But if you go to my colorization layers, and I'm still working on this file. I keep saying I'll finish it, but I never do. I colorized. You can see how the grass. Look how sloppy my colors look. You can even like see the brush strokes. But when I change it back to overlay, it starts to look it looks a lot better than if it was just a solid color. Although it looks like I accidentally applied some grass in there too. So my trees were a layer. The rocks are kind of a layer. I sort of, whenever I had different foliage. Of course, this is a little bit different from the image you guys were creating. My rocks were kind of a layer. One of the things I had to do is I had to go and ask my grandpa what color he painted the door and the house and stuff. I think it was supposed to be green. And the projector's making it look rather blue.